Cereal prices have been trending downwards recently with a bit of turbulence on the way down, shall we say. Wheat, barley and maize spot at the moment are in around 220 to 230 euro per tonne. Had we been talking 2 weeks ago, they were more like 200 to 210 per tonne, and they were looking like they might go under 200 euro a tonne for the first time in 4 years. However, Russia have recently increased their prices, and that's the reason for the increase in cereal costs.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of The Pig Edge, Teagasc's Pig podcast with me, Amy Quinn, where we are bringing you the latest news, information and advice to keep Irish pig farmers up to date. Kieran Keane, pig research technician specialising in nutrition with the Pig Development Department here at Teagasc, joins us on today's episode to discuss current feed prices, the new feed lab in Teagasc and upcoming feed trials. Kieran, thanks for joining us. Many people know you already, but for those that don't, could you tell us a little about your role here with us in Teagasc?
Yeah, I've been in Teagasc now for 2.5 years, having previously worked for Makeway and Hermitage prior to that. I managed a feed mill in Moore Park, which supplies the standard diets and the trial diets for use in the pig unit. So I purchase the feed ingredients, operate and maintain all the machinery here in the mill, manufacture the diets and look after quality control for the mill. Also, more recently, I volunteered to help set up the feed nutritional lab here in Moore Park.
Kieran, you mentioned there that you do, I suppose, all the buying of ingredients here for the unit and for the research trials. If we look at cereals, where are prices at the moment?
Cereal prices have been trending downwards recently with a bit of turbulence on the way down, shall we say. Wheat, barley and maize spot at the moment are in around 220 to 230 euro per tonne. Had we been talking 2 weeks ago, they were more like 200 to 210 per tonne, and they were looking like they might go under 200 euro a tonne for the first time in 4 years. However, Russia have recently increased their prices, and that's the reason for the increase in cereal costs. There's also some talk at the moment about a levy being placed on Russian cereals, and that wouldn't be good news for users of cereals here. But look, we're in better shape than we were this time 2 years ago, where prices were well over 300 euro a tonne for cereals. I don't think we're going to get back to the prices from 5 to 10 years ago. We're probably after creating a new base, after hitting such high record prices and maintaining those high prices for so long. For homegrown cereals at the minute, it hasn't been a good spring so far for planting, and it could be getting late if the weather doesn't pick up soon. And spring barley seed is also said to be in tight supply for the season.
So that's cereals. What about soya?
Soya then is a different story. Soya is quite tight at the moment. And the good news, though, is it's tight because imports have slowed down as it's a falling market. So no one wants to be stuck with soya at the wrong price. So spot soya at the moment is 500 to 525 euros a tonne. But April-May prices are around 450 a tonne, and it's heading for 400 euro a tonne for later in the year as we start into the new crop. The soya oil industry is going quite well at the minute, and as soybean meal is a byproduct of this, it means there should be a good supply. There's new crushing plants coming on stream in the US, and this should mean that there has been increased planting and therefore production, and hopefully this will help to lower the prices due to having a good supply again. The euro-dollar exchange rate has a big bearing on soya prices, and at the minute that's 108, which has probably been its average over the last 12 months. But some forecasters predicted if Mr. Trump gets back into the White House, we could see the dollar and euro getting closer to parity again, and this would be bad news for people buying soya on this side of the Atlantic. So all in all, the forecast doesn't look too bad for the next 6 months, but there could be some clouds on the horizon too.
Kieran, what does all this mean then for compound feed?
As far as compound feed is concerned, we've been seeing a slow decline in prices in the last few months. Obviously, compounders won't be as quick to move as the spot market on ingredients, up or down. But we're almost back to prices from before the war in the Ukraine started. And we should continue to see compounders' prices dropping if ingredient prices go the way they're headed. Processing costs should be coming down too, as energy prices are falling and set to continue falling, but probably won't return to pre-crisis costs for energy for the foreseeable future.
Kieran, you mentioned at the start the new feed lab in Moore Park, an egg we did in January's episode. So you're one of the people that will be setting the lab up and operating it. Can you tell us a bit more about it?
Yeah, so we've set up the feed nutrition lab here in Moore Park, and so far we've been doing some testing of feed ingredient samples, taking them from a small cohort of farmers nearby. We've been testing these with NIR and some wet chemistry to help develop equations for our new NIR machine. Much of what we've done so far is as much about training ourselves to do the tests and calibrate the equipment as it is getting results. We are developing protocols and methodologies around feed testing. We haven't done any mycotoxin or microbiological testing to date. Resources are somewhat limited, and some of these tests are quite time consuming as well. So we have to see what the more viable tests to carry out are, and ultimately what kind of information will most benefit the farmers.
You were part of a team that visited Catalonia recently to scope out their methods and approaches. Can you tell us what you learned there?
With our feed lab in mind, we visited two companies in Catalonia involved in the testing of feed ingredients for quality and feed safety. The first company was Qualimac, and they are a non-profit feed quality association, and they ensure the quality and feed safety of agri-foods in Catalonia and its surrounds. So they take samples from 4 ports in the region, from almost every vessel of feed ingredients that comes in. They take their samples from the trucks as they leave the ports, and they have had an automatic sampling arm installed at the port of Tarragona, where almost 8 million tons of agri-feed ingredients were unloaded in the last year. They don't actually do any of the testing themselves. They send the samples to an independent lab to test its quality and safety, and then they disseminate the results to their members for them to use this information however they see fit. They've been doing this for over 25 years, and they were founded when 15 feed mills came together to try and establish control of the quality of the feed ingredients they were buying. They now have over 100 members that subscribe to their service.
Okay, so what tests do they get carried out for them?
Depending on the ingredient they're testing, they get wet chemistry tests to determine the feed composition. So that's dry matter, crude protein, starch, fat, ash. They do microbiological tests for E. coli and Salmonella, Clostridium, Enterobacteria. They test for a range of mycotoxins, including alpha-toxin B1. They test for pesticides and herbicides. And in soya, as it's so expensive and makes up the bulk of protein element of diets, they test the amino acid profile and the protein digestibility in soya.
So why are they testing the feed ingredients?
They have 3 reasons for carrying out the test. The first is quality control for their members. The second is feed safety. And the third reason is for public health.
And how do their members get results?
They have an app and a web page where members can log in and check live results. They also host seminars to present the results of their tests. In the case of an emergency or an alert, they send out WhatsApps. They have a technical council which meets once per year to discuss the issues that they have there and if they should change their testing protocol for different ingredients. But as it's a non-profit organisation, the more members they have, the more money they make. So the more samples and tests they can have carried out.
Do they have to send out many alerts?
In 2023, they sampled more than 600 ships, which were carrying over 12 million tonnes into the region. They got a sample from 94% of all the ships that came in. Worth noting, the Department of Agriculture equivalent over there tests about 10%. And they had 190 warnings from these. Now, none of these were non-compliance issues. They were, to break down to 190, there was 120 of them involving mycotoxins, which were above their own quality threshold. But they either don't have a statutory regulation upon them or they were not above the regulation. It was just a quality threshold that they have. There were 50 of them in soya where the solubility of protein was a quality issue, and the rest were made up of fungi, yeast, salmonella and E. coli. So there was no actual non-conformances from a feed safety or public health viewpoint, just quality issues. Worth noting as well that Qualimac only tests ingredients from the port. They don't test any homegrown ingredients or any arriving by truck from France. To be fair, trying to look after the 12 million tonnes coming in through the ports is probably enough to be getting on with. In our own lab, we've been testing quite a bit of Irish wheat and barley to date, and well, it might be a bit more difficult logistically to get samples and test them from such a range of sources around the island. I think it's important we continue to test Irish cereals, as Irish pig farmers are using a lot of Irish cereals here. So the second company we visited was Cooperative Divers. They're an agri-food cooperative based about an hour outside Barcelona. We visited their feed mill for pig feed, and more specifically their quality control building within that facility. So they've been in business for over 100 years, and they produce 340,000 tonnes of finished feed annually. They rely on Qualimac for much of their feed safety and some quality testing, but they also carry out their own quality testing in their own lab within their quality control facility. So they built their quality control building quite recently, and it's well laid out. The weighbridge is located next to the building, and on the first floor of the building there's a huge picture window looking down into the trucks. So that's the first quality control check, is that the cover is drawn off the load as it drives up in the weighbridge, and someone is looking down into it to visually inspect the load. They have an automatic sampling arm right next to the weighbridge, and that takes three samples from the trailer, which is transported directly into the quality control building. In there, they visually inspect the sample, they check the smell, and test the moisture level. The sample is then sent upstairs in the building for NIR analysis, and they also have a lab upstairs for mycotoxin testing, microbiological testing, and again with soya, they check the solubility of protein. They tell me this is one of the most important things when it comes to soya, because the variability in protein digestibility is usually dependent on the conditioning of the beans in the refinery when the oil is being extracted. So this ultimately determines the quality of your soya. So armed with the NIR results and the soya quality results, their nutritionists will reformulate their diets once a month based on current prices and quality analysis.
Reformulating once a month, this might seem like a big undertaking. What do you think?
Yeah, in the context of an Irish feed mill, it would be, most likely. But this company, in this mill, they only make 11 different pig diets. So all their customers use these diets and these diets only. Because of this, it makes the quality control of their finished feed a lot easier to maintain and monitor. If you think about it, they're making huge volumes of the same feed, and that's a lot easier to maintain quality than small batches, as double pass conditioners or expanders take a few ton to get up to temperature and work efficiently. So making a small batch and starting the process, it can adversely affect the quality. They do a lot of lab analysis on their finished feeds, and having less diets makes that more feasible, I suppose. They test particle size, pellet durability and strength in their finished feed. They also have been testing water quality for their customers in their lab. And apparently since they've started testing the water, they've eradicated scours on a lot of the farms that they've been testing for.
So after the visits and the discussions that you've had, how do you see the lab here in Moorpark operating over the next few months?
So the next few months, we're looking at continuing to develop the equations for the NIR. And that's giving us at the moment dry matter, crude protein, starch, fibre, fat and ash, and could potentially be used to give us amino acid profiles as well. We're going to continue using ingredient samples from the farmers we already have on board, and perhaps widening that pool a little just to allow a bit more diversity in the origin of ingredients. We have to develop a robust sampling protocol and methodology based on industry best practice and some of our own early results and findings. And that's something that really the trip to Spain brought to the fore. We have to discuss with the stakeholders group what type of testing is going to be feasible and what they would like to see happening, and what type of information will benefit the farmers the most. So then we streamline this to try and match our resources and budget to try and develop a service that can benefit the farmers and the industry as best we can.
Kieran, just to finish up, we have a number of nutrition trials ongoing or commencing shortly in Teagasc. Can you tell us a little bit about them?
Yeah, there's a few trials coming up. There's a trial on acid binding capacity of feeds in newly post-wean pigs. and we'll be checking gut development based on that. There's another trial with the use of algae as a feed ingredient in pig diets. There are a number of other alternative protein type ingredients to be trialled also. These trials are about sustainability and an effort to reduce reliance on soya as the main protein source. We're also looking at lower protein diets to help reduce emissions. So all in all, a lot of the research in nutrition at the minute is about sustainability and not being as reliant on soya, as it's got such a high carbon footprint for us to be using it here in Ireland.
Kieran, thanks for that. Lots to digest there, and we look forward to an update on the Feed Lab and the research at the Pig Open Day and in the future. That's it for this episode of The Pig Edge, and thanks to Kieran for joining me on the show. Don't forget to listen and follow on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast from so you never miss an episode. And for more information from the Pig Development Department, go to teagasc.ie/pigs. I'm Amy Quinn, and thanks for listening.